Let's spar. First topic. All right, this one is about Alec Baldwin. Have you heard about this case?
Yeah. He shot one of the directors or something.
Well, actually, he shot a cinematographer on the movie that he was directing and producing and starring in. And so it's his movie. It's a small movie, a small budget, but it's a Western, as you can see. And they're sitting there in the middle of the desert on the set. And, it's a shoot 'em up movie. So, it was just sort of another day at the office. And he was pointing his gun at the cinematographer, as you would, shooting a scene, pointing the gun. And the gun went off, and tragically, there was a live round in the gun, and he killed the cinematographer, a young lady. I think she had kids. It was very, very horrible and tragic. And ultimately, it's been determined that he needs to face involuntary manslaughter charges. And do you know what that is?
Yeah, killing someone without your volition.
Right. So it's killing someone by accident. But this type of charge, or this type of was invented because, it's not a freak accident. It's kind of came about by negligence. And so if you kill somebody because you failed to live up to your responsibility to protect them, it's like a parent who fails to provide the conditions for life for their child, and their child dies from negligence. There's got to be some kind of consequence for that. So with this charge comes, actually in America, between, I think I read, 5 to 14-year jail sentence if he's found guilty. And so should Alec Baldwin be facing a 5 to 14-year prison sentence for what took place? What do you think? You want to go first or second on this one?
I'll go second.
Okay. Oh, you're going to make it hard for me. Okay, what do I think? I'm going to say yes. I think that, the buck stops with the guy on top. And I'm going to use the analogy of the president. A lot of things happen in a country, and the president has a lot of ministers that are responsible for different, aspects of the bigger picture. But at the end of the day, if something goes horribly wrong, the responsibility lies with the person who's in charge of everything. And that person has a duty to make sure the system works effectively, that everyone's doing their job right. Forget who it was. Truman, the American president, that had a sign on his desk that says "the buck stops here." So, and I think that's he was that guy on the set of this movie. And ultimately, when you're shooting up guns in a movie, of course there's somebody in charge for a prop person for those guns, but the buck has to stop with him.
I don't think so. I think a lot of times you see is that oftentimes in business and in government, it's the person who's responsible who will get charged. It's never going to be the big boss. If there's an issue in the secretary, and perhaps there's a case of sexual assault, you're not going to blame the president if it was the president's associate, or I think it has to be assigned to the person who's in charge. The weapons expert for this movie, the person who put the ammunition into the gun, is the one who should get charged. I don't see why Alec Baldwin, unlike any other actor who has to fire props, I don't know why you would, consider yourself, put it in your shoes. If you were handed a gun and say, all right, let's shoot this scene, you're handed a gun by the weapons expert and you shot it off into the distance and you killed someone, do you think it'd be fair that you were charged for it, even though you were told what to do? You were given the scene, you had to perform. Yes, he was the director, but he wasn't the weapons expert. He wasn't the person who was supposed to make sure the gun was not. He wasn't supposed to make sure the gun was safe. That was someone else's.
I see where you're coming from, but ultimately, by the way, this is the open round. At the end of the day, he was in charge, and there's a victim who lost her life, and her kids lost their mother. So there has to be justice. There has to be some closure. Do you think
justice is locking him away for 14 years? What will that do for the family?
Well, I think it sets a precedent, and to make sure that future directors don't have this kind of negligence, and so that this type of thing won't happen again. And I mean, this happens all the time in the legal circles, that when it happens to one person, that becomes the precedent, and now there's a law for the next person.
But we'd be getting the wrong person anyways. We wouldn't be getting the person who's responsible. We would just be getting the person who's stuck on. So we
Well,
wouldn't
you
be
said
solving
it's
anything.
never the big boss that gets charged. It's always some underling. But isn't that just a form of scapegoating? And so
No,
why
it's
should
the
they
person who's
scapegoat?
responsible. The person who's responsible deserves to get charged. If you're not responsible for it, why should you get charged with it just out of you shouldn't we want to avoid being the lamb. Like that's what we want to avoid in society.
Okay, good job. Yeah, it's really a tough one, and I don't know how I actually feel about it, to be honest. Like on one hand, it just seems not right for Alec Baldwin, but on the other hand, it seems really not right for that cinematographer, you know. And I wonder if the roles were reversed and Alec Baldwin was the one who got shot. I think everything would be done to hold the person the shooter responsible. In any case, you ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right. So since this is a father-son special today, to round two, El Chapo, and I know this El Chapo's son has a name, but I don't know it, and so I'm going to call him El Chapo Jr. And so Junior, do you know about El Chapo, the Mexican drug pin? Okay, let me give you a little bit of background. El Chapo, the guy on the right hand side, he was one of the most notorious drug cartel leaders in all of history. Kind of in the same vein as Pablo Escobar from Narcos and in Colombia, but this was a Mexican drug cartel leader that built up an empire second to none. He actually started selling drugs from his Mexican drug empire to and transporting them all throughout Europe, opening gateways to the different continents, and he became so wealthy and so powerful that his cartel was more powerful than the government. In fact, they did catch up with him, the Mexican authorities, and put El Chapo in jail. And you know what happened? He escaped. He did one of those classic laundry cart escapes. You got just like in the movies, and he didn't stay free long. They caught him again, and this time they put him in a more heavy duty prison, a fortified prison, and where he sat. And you know what happened? He escaped again. So he escaped a second time from the Mexican prison, but this time using a tunnel because he was famous for digging tunnels. That was one of the ways he transported drugs into the United States was by digging tunnels. He had dug thousands of tunnels, professional tunnels. So he got his crew to go to the nearest village to the jail and built a mile-long tunnel all the way. They reached right underneath his jail cell. And he went to use the toilet and disappeared. And there's actually footage of him on YouTube doing a selfie as he's escaping on that little motorcycle on the track to freedom. And his freedom did not last long. He was good at escaping, but not good at remaining escaped. So he got caught again a third time. And when they caught him the third time, they extradited him to the United States, where he sits now in a maximum security prison in the United States, and he's just languishing and suffering because they won't let him even move one eyelid without being filmed and scrutinized. In any case, he handed over his reign of power to his son, this guy, El Chapo Jr. And El Chapo Jr. has been running the big, giant Mexican drug cartel, which is still as powerful as anything. His little, security guard team, or I guess his standing army, rivals the Mexican army. And they actually captured El Chapo Jr. a few years ago. And the reaction that his men started wreaking havoc on all of society and shooting everything and starting fires and blocking traffic until the pressure was so much that they released him just to bring some peace to the citizens in that region. I forget, Sinaloa. In any case, recently they captured Junior again, and exactly the same thing happened again. It's almost like a playbook. They captured Junior and brought him into custody, and his men started wreaking havoc on the region. They were shooting at passenger airlines with airplanes in the tarmac. They were shooting from helicopters into houses. They were just wreaking havoc on society. And so here we are again, the same situation. So, what do you think? Should the Mexican authorities release El Chapo's son?
No, I don't think they should, because ultimately, yeah, there's a big issue, and I understand that a lot of citizens' lives are at risks, and it's a dangerous time. But just because, we shouldn't just because this El Chapo Jr. is, his capture is causing all of this, pressure and all of this stress, doesn't mean we should just let, this cartel leader away. I think that maybe they should instead reinforce their military and sort of go for the whole organization. And I think most of the time you'll find with cartels is that once you have the main guy, I think the rest it's not I would hope it's not too hard to crumble the rest of the organization. You already have the leader. You already have all of that information, hopefully, that you can get out of him. I don't think it's a good idea just to let him out, because think about all the power you're giving to him. If you just let him out of jail and let him roam again, now he knows, like, oh, I don't care anymore about going to jail because I can just get out
I
for
think
free.
your point is well taken in the sense of like a mafiosa family, that if the fish rots from the head down, if you take out the head, I don't know if that's the right metaphor, but this isn't like that, because this is like a generational succession of power, and there is nobody else going to inherit this power other than someone directly in his family. So there's every incentive for his standing army to wreak havoc and not stop, because all of their meal tickets are paid by this guy, and there's nobody waiting on the sidelines to take over. It's kind of like an all or nothing, and so it really shines a light on kind of the shortcomings of the Mexican army and the authorities, and they kind of know that Mexican authorities don't have the means, the resources, the will to withstand so much pressure. So, did you argue no, they shouldn't release him? I say yes. They're never going to stop until this guy's released. They have to release him to give
Yeah,
some.
but I think I don't know, like, where would it end then if they can, like, wouldn't this empower other cartels and just sort of turn Mexico into an even more dangerous country? I think it has to
I
end
just
some
think
point.
they have to get more creative on how to solve this problem, and maybe kind of work from the inside, like do like a Julius Caesar and talk to the guy who wants the power, and set up kind of a way for someone else to usurp the power, and then this
Perhaps,
cartel
but I
has to
still
remain.
think,
They have billions of dollars. It's not going anywhere.
I don't know. I think, well, I guess, yeah, it is tough, but I do think, capturing him is like the first step, and perhaps they make a deal, say, all right, we'll put him in a low, like, we'll give him video games, we'll give him a pool table, we'll put him in low, but he
Well,
has to be captured.
another option is working with him, and saying, look at your father. He's sitting in a maximum security in America. He's never going to escape. Do you want that fate, or do you want to kind of work with our authorities and mitigate and bring the tone down a little bit? Okay, crazy, crazy. I don't even know what else to say about that. Good luck to the Mexican authorities. It must be a terribly difficult situation in all the Mexican people. All right, and the last one today. Should we automatically tip a bare minimum of 15% when we eat in a restaurant? You may go first.
I'm gonna say no. I think honestly, tips coming from, I was just in Europe recently, and I know in other countries it's similar. Tips, I don't see really the value in them, especially since a lot of the bars I've been to, the tips purely go to the waiters and they don't tip out the staff or any of the other members. Because as the server, as like the waiter, you're already getting paid a wage, and I know it's a little bit lower. It's $12 instead of 16 here, I believe. But 15%, that means every meal you're giving them at least like $10, $12, and it's like, we're like, I just don't understand it. All they're doing is grabbing their food, giving it to you. I worked in the restaurant business, and I agree, as someone who would be serving, I don't see really why people have to tip 15% minimum. And this is talking about 15% is like, oh yeah, you were okay. Now we're talking about 18 as if it was good, 20 as if they were great. It keeps going up, and I don't really see why for the work they're doing. I mean, maybe the chefs should be getting tips because they do a lot more
Well,
work, I
I
think,
think
than the waiters.
on a principled level, I think we should bare minimum. I think 15% is a reasonable bare minimum tip. And if you're really impressed with the work, then tip more. But we know that waiters have a slog. They're working for restaurants, and the restaurants are paying them minimum wage. And it's more than just hauling food around. It's providing an experience and being joyful. And if there's a waiter that's going out of their way, or waitress, that to make your experience joyful and pleasant, then they should be rewarded for that. And so there are different, so bare minimum 15% to kind of make up for their terrible minimum wage. Some people are career waiters too. And if you go to a place like the Keg, and people are waiting there, and they're trying to raise a family, and for someone working as a career, and there isn't a rule like this, they could be shortchanged.
But if we look at the nature of a tip, the whole point we're giving them a tip is because we're giving them more than what they deserve, more than the food, more than what they deserve. But if they're doing nothing and we find that their service is terrible, why should we still give them a 15% tip?
I think it's just to recognize the nature of their job. And the tip is also a way of surpassing the restaurant. So we're paying the restaurant for the food and the product, but the tip is kind of recognizing the person who's kind of giving us the experience or making us
But it's
comfortable
similar
and
to
paying
like Home
attention to our
Depot and
needs.
that. What about like guest service work when you're helping a customer figure out every single thing they want when you go to Home Depot and you're helping them through all these things? Why don't we tip them?
Well, you said you're opposed to the tip because they don't kick back to the other workers, but if there wasn't a 15% minimum, there's no chance there's going to be any kickback. I worked also as a waiter, and when I got tipped, I kicked back to the chef and the what do you call those guys that set the
Expediter,
table?
a
Yes.
bus, a host.
Okay, well done, well done.